Have you ever felt like something fundamental is slipping away, even as the world around you seems to progress faster than ever? You scroll through your feed, bombarded by innovation, success stories, and endless possibilities, but instead of feeling inspired, you feel empty. There's a gnawing sense that despite all the advancements, we're losing touch with something essential, something that made life feel real, grounded, and meaningful. It's as if modernity itself has betrayed us, offering freedom but delivering chains, promising growth but leaving us burnt out and hollow. We live in a world that celebrates progress, but what if that progress is leading us to a dead end? What if the society we've built, a society of relentless productivity, hyperconnectivity, and constant self-optimization, isn't evolving, but unraveling? This video is not just an analysis of what's going wrong, it's a deep dive into how modernity itself has become a trap. Philosophers like Zygmunt Bauman and Byung-Chul Han warned us that modern life would drown us in endless options while stripping away our sense of self. They saw a future where individuals, in their quest to be efficient, would become commodities, measured, compared, and discarded if they failed to keep pace. A future where the very concept of freedom would become an illusion, a tool of subtle manipulation rather than genuine autonomy. This is more than a philosophical discussion. It's a call to pause, to reflect, and to ask the uncomfortable questions we've been avoiding. Are we truly living or just existing in a perpetual loop of productivity and consumption? Are we masters of our destiny, or have we been unwittingly molded to fit a world that doesn't care about our well-being? Stay with me, because as we break down the collapse of modernity, you might just find the courage to break free from its grip, to start living with intention, to reclaim your sense of purpose, and to choose a path not dictated by algorithms or societal expectations, but by your own human spirit. Imagine waking up one day to realize that everything you've been taught about progress, freedom, and purpose is crumbling before your eyes. The modern world, which promised endless evolution, has instead brought us to the edge of existential collapse. We were sold the idea of continuous improvement, of perpetual growth. But what did we really achieve? An endless cycle of exhaustion, disillusionment, and an insatiable craving for more. Our lives have become a constant chase, a never-ending race where rest is equated with failure and silence is mistaken for weakness. The modernity that once held the promise of liberation now feels more like a burden. It was supposed to lift us to a higher state of being, offering new possibilities and a sense of purpose. Yet here we are, more anxious, more isolated, and more detached from the core of what makes us human. Philosophers like Zygmunt Bauman warned us about this decades ago with his concept of liquid modernity, a state where nothing remains solid or lasting. Relationships, values, even identities become fluid, interchangeable, disposable. We drift through life without anchoring ourselves to anything truly meaningful. And Byung-Chul Han also saw it coming. Modern society pushing itself into exhaustion, driven by the relentless demands of productivity and self-exploitation. In his view, the pressure to constantly perform, to always be improving, to relentlessly push the limits of personal achievement has led us to a state of chronic fatigue and emotional depletion. But did anyone really believe progress would be so corrosive? That the pursuit of a perfect life would leave us empty, disconnected, and perpetually dissatisfied? The world moves faster, technology surges ahead, and we are left grasping for meaning. Was this the evolution we envisioned? Or did we mistake motion for growth, speed for direction? We thought we were advancing, building a future where human potential would flourish. Instead, we created a machine that consumes us, measures us, and defines us by metrics rather than values. We became not just part of the system, we became the system itself, unable to distinguish our authentic desires from the demands imposed upon us. Modernity was supposed to break the chains of tradition, liberating the individual to become anything, but instead of breaking chains, it forged new ones, more subtle, more ingrained. We thought we were freeing ourselves from religious dogma and outdated norms, but we ended up enslaving ourselves to algorithms, likes, and fleeting validation. We became prisoners of data, statistics, and superficial benchmarks of success. Max Weber saw it clearly. His metaphor of the iron cage is more relevant than ever. We are trapped not just by bureaucracy, but by our own quest for efficiency. The machine that was meant to serve us now rules over us. We are constantly optimizing, constantly achieving, but to what end? We can no longer distinguish between productivity and purpose, between movement and progress. Our lives have become project after project, goal after goal, without ever questioning why we pursue them. Look around. Cities teeming with people who barely acknowledge each other. Social media bursting with curated perfection, while loneliness quietly seeps into our lives. The promise of interconnectedness turned into a dystopian reality, where authentic connection is rare. We scroll through lives we'll never live, comparing ourselves to illusions, feeding the beast that tells us we're not enough. We are more connected than ever, but less in touch with ourselves. Even our deepest thoughts seem mediated through screens, filtered through opinions that aren't truly ours. We search for validation in numbers, in the approval of strangers, in fleeting digital applause. Think about it. How often do we sacrifice our well-being for the illusion of progress? We exhaust ourselves for careers that drain us, relationships that don't fulfill us, and routines that keep us stuck in a loop of busyness. We follow trends not because they resonate with our essence, but because not following them means being left behind. We cling to the latest gadgets, the next big thing, convinced that it will finally make us feel complete, finally fill the void that grows despite all our accomplishments. But instead of finding meaning, we end up with clutter, emotional, mental, physical, drowning in things that are supposed to make life easier, but only make it more complicated. Maybe it's because we mistook noise for connection, data for wisdom, productivity for fulfillment. We have become more efficient but less present, more informed but less insightful, more connected but profoundly alone. The hustle culture tells us that rest is for the weak, that success requires constant action, relentless ambition. And so, we push forward, ignoring the quiet despair that lingers at the edges of our lives. We convince ourselves that happiness is just one more achievement away, but the finish line keeps moving. But here's the unsettling truth. This collapse of modernity isn't just a societal problem, it's a personal one. We are the architects of this reality, complicit in its making. The modern world didn't just happen to us, we built it brick by brick, app by app, expectation by expectation. We subscribe to the myth of infinite growth, forgetting that human fulfillment doesn't scale like technology. We abandon simplicity for complexity, thinking it would make us more sophisticated, but it just made us more distracted. We wanted to master the world, but in the process, we lost mastery over ourselves. Ask yourself, have you ever felt that gnawing emptiness even when surrounded by the latest technology? Have you wondered why, despite all this progress, peace feels so elusive? Maybe it's because we are constantly striving to catch up with a future that never arrives, constantly proving our worth to a society that doesn't know how to value human depth. We are caught in the contradiction of modern life, obsessed with productivity, yet profoundly unproductive when it comes to nurturing the soul. So if the very foundation of modernity is cracked, where do we go from here? Can we escape the cage we built for ourselves, or have we become too dependent on the very chains that hold us back? The real question is not just about abandoning modernity, but about redefining it, reshaping progress to serve us rather than enslave us. Can we reclaim our humanity in a world that demands we act more like machines? Or are we too far gone, too invested in the system to ever break free? Technology was supposed to set us free, to amplify our potential, to connect us in unprecedented ways. But somewhere along the line, we became consumed by it, rather than being the ones in control. The promises of the digital age, efficiency, connectivity, empowerment, turned into demands. We are expected to be perpetually available, constantly improving, and always performing at peak capacity. Rest becomes a luxury. Introspection, an afterthought. The human being, once celebrated for creativity, introspection, and depth, now reduced to a cog in a machine that never stops running. Max Weber warned us about this more than a century ago. He called it the iron cage of rationality, a system where human life becomes subordinated to efficiency, where bureaucracy swallows individuality. He foresaw the rise of a world where logic dominates every sphere of life, and human passion, spontaneity, and creativity are suffocated. But Weber's vision was just the beginning. In today's hyper-connected world, the cage has only tightened. It's no longer just bureaucracy that constrains us. It's the very technology that was meant to liberate us. Consider the modern workplace. Employees are no longer just workers, they are data points. Their productivity is measured, their breaks are timed, and their interactions monitored. Performance reviews are no longer about growth, but about output. In the age of algorithms, people are not just employees, they are data packages, constantly evaluated, compared, and often discarded when their efficiency falls behind. Byung-Chul Han captures this tragic reality by highlighting the concept of self-exploitation. In his view, the modern individual is not just oppressed by external forces, but is complicit in their own exhaustion. We no longer need a boss breathing down our necks. We have internalized the pressure to be constantly productive, constantly available, constantly competing. We exploit ourselves, believing it is our choice, when in reality, it is the system's demand that we have mistaken for personal ambition. Think about it. How many times have you pushed yourself beyond your limits, convinced that resting would make you weak or unworthy? How often have you sacrificed relationships, hobbies, and mental peace in the name of being more productive, more efficient? Our obsession with self-optimization is not a mark of progress, it's a sign of our surrender to a system that sees us not as human beings, but as units of economic output. We carry the weight of proving ourselves valuable, not just to our bosses or peers, but to an invisible algorithm that never stops assessing us. Our value used to be rooted in who we were, our stories, our struggles, our unique perspectives. Now it's calculated by what we can produce, how fast we can adapt, how seamlessly we can integrate with technology. This is the new reality of human value, a metric-driven existence where our deeper qualities are overlooked because they don't fit into the data model. Our worth has been hijacked by the relentless demand for measurable results. The question is no longer, what makes you unique, but rather, how can you optimize to be more efficient? And where does this leave our humanity? We are disconnected not only from each other, but from ourselves. We bury our desires, our dreams, our emotional needs, to maintain a facade of constant productivity. We become isolated in our own performance bubbles, believing that success is measured solely by output. Relationships suffer, creativity dwindles, and the soul, starved of genuine connection and reflection, begins to wither. In this race for optimization, we lose the most human parts of ourselves. The paradox is glaring. The more we strive to prove our worth through productivity, the less we feel truly valuable. The more we achieve, the more we doubt our achievements. We see it everywhere. People who reach the pinnacle of success but are haunted by emptiness. The burnout epidemic is not a sign of individual failure, but a symptom of a system that refuses to value rest, contemplation, or the richness of human complexity. We have reached a point where our identities are so entwined with our productivity that when we stop moving, we feel like we cease to exist. Our minds have become factories, always running, never resting. Even our leisure is monetized and optimized, turning hobbies into side hustles and relaxation into another form of productivity. We work not just to live, but to justify our existence. We are driven by a fear of being deemed useless, irrelevant, or unworthy of attention. This is the cruel irony of the modern age. In trying to be seen as indispensable, we have made ourselves disposable. It's no wonder so many people feel lost, anxious, and burned out. They sense that something fundamental has been lost, but they can't articulate it because the language of human value has been rewritten in code, algorithms, and performance metrics. We don't just feel tired, we feel used. We feel drained not because we are weak, but because we are constantly being extracted from our attention, our energy, our time, all consumed without replenishment. The illusion of freedom is perhaps the most dangerous part. We are told we are choosing to work harder, to stay connected, to constantly improve. But is it really choice when the alternative, disconnecting, slowing down, seeking depth, is branded as failure or laziness? The system doesn't need to oppress us openly. It has taught us to oppress ourselves. Have you ever stopped to question this cycle? Have you ever dared to unplug, to be unproductive for a moment and felt the guilt wash over you? That guilt is not a personal flaw. It is a conditioned response. implanted by a world that equates stillness with weakness. We have internalized the idea that value must be earned, that existence without production is a waste. But is it truly living when every moment is a performance, when every breath is measured against an expected outcome? The truth is that we have allowed ourselves to be redefined, not as beings capable of joy, thought, or creativity, but as efficient, predictable, measurable resources. The question that remains is, can we reclaim our value not as workers but as human beings? Can we learn to exist without the need to constantly prove that existence? Or have we forgotten how to be human in the relentless pursuit of being useful? Freedom. It's the ideal that modern society prides itself on, the idea that we are the architects of our own destiny, making choices that reflect our individual desires. But is it real? Or is this freedom nothing more than an illusion, carefully crafted to keep us docile and compliant? The uncomfortable truth is that modern freedom often functions as a subtle form of control. We think we are free because we can choose between countless options, but in reality those choices are often predefined, shaped by forces we don't see and rarely question. We are offered a vast array of possibilities, but all within a narrow framework designed to keep us engaged, distracted, and ultimately dependent. Michel Foucault warned us about this invisible control, an omnipresent surveillance that shapes our behavior not through overt force, but through the fear of being watched. He called it the panopticon, a metaphor for how society subtly conditions us to regulate ourselves, to police our own actions out of fear of judgment. It's the idea that someone could be watching, even if no one actually is. So we adapt. We modify our behavior, censor our thoughts, and present versions of ourselves that fit the expected norms. It's a self-imposed prison where the bars are made of social norms and cultural expectations, and the guard in the tower is not a person, but a concept, pervasive and inescapable. Jean Baudrillard took this further, suggesting that in the modern age, reality itself has been replaced by simulacra, copies without originals. We live in a hyper-real world where images and representations have replaced genuine experience. Social media amplifies this illusion, giving us the sense that we are expressing ourselves freely, while in reality, we are curating identities shaped by what gets the most attention. We become performers, addicted to the illusion of connection, while deeper truths remain buried. The curated self is a product, molded and shaped not by inner reflection, but by algorithms, trends, and collective expectations. Think about it. How often do we believe that posting, sharing, and expressing online is an act of freedom, yet these platforms manipulate our attention, shaping what we value, how we think, and even how we perceive ourselves? The freedom to speak becomes the compulsion to perform. The freedom to choose becomes the anxiety of making the right choice. We feel powerful in our ability to voice opinions, but rarely question why those opinions seem eerily similar to the collective noise around us. The illusion of expression becomes just another way of conforming, hidden under the guise of individualism. We celebrate the diversity of choice, but how often do we reflect on the nature of those choices? Are we really choosing from a place of authenticity, or are we guided by a culture that tells us what to want, how to act, who to be? The freedom to customize, personalize, and curate every aspect of our lives might feel liberating, but it often locks us into patterns of self-presentation and validation. We become obsessed with crafting the perfect image, chasing approval, and measuring worth through metrics designed to keep us hooked. This illusion of freedom is seductive because it feels empowering. We believe we are in control because we make choices every day. But how many of those choices are truly ours? Are we living according to our own principles, or are we following scripts handed down by culture, media, and invisible algorithms? The paradox of modern freedom is that it disguises control as autonomy. We act as if we are breaking free, but in reality, we are merely playing our roles, guided by forces we barely understand. And so the question lingers, are we truly free if our choices are manipulated, our desires manufactured, and our sense of self curated to fit an algorithmic ideal? Or are we just prisoners of a system too intricate to see? The unsettling possibility is that the more convinced we are of our freedom, the more deeply we might be caught in a web of control. If our choices are influenced before we even make them, can we genuinely claim to be free at all? If modernity is collapsing and human value is being reduced to productivity, if freedom itself has become an illusion, where does that leave us? Are we destined to remain trapped in this cycle of exhaustion, superficial connection, and manipulated autonomy? Or is there a way out, a path toward reclaiming our humanity in a world that seems determined to strip it away? The future feels uncertain, and for many that uncertainty breeds fear and resignation. But what if this moment, this collapse, is not just an end, but a turning point? What if the very disintegration of modern ideals offers an opportunity to reimagine how we live, how we connect, and how we define ourselves? Sometimes the breakdown of a flawed system is the necessary prelude to something more genuine, more human. To move forward, we must first reclaim the essence of community and simplicity. We've been conditioned to value complexity, more technology, more efficiency, more connectivity. Yet in this pursuit, we lost sight of what truly nurtures the human spirit: real relationships, time spent in contemplation, moments of stillness. Instead of adding more layers to our lives, we need to strip them back to rediscover the richness in simplicity. Community cannot be built through algorithms or curated online personas. It thrives in vulnerability, shared stories, and the willingness to be present without distraction. Philosopher Hannah Arendt spoke of the importance of action, not as mere productivity, but as a collective endeavor that shapes the world. Action, in her view, is rooted in being together, in dialogue, in thinking critically, rather than just reacting. We need to restore this sense of community, where we engage not just to be heard, but to understand, where conversation replaces competition and contemplation takes precedence over constant motion. Another key lies in introspection, reclaiming the ability to think deeply without the need for instant validation. We have become too accustomed to expressing thoughts impulsively, seeking immediate feedback, rather than allowing ideas to mature in solitude. By nurturing our inner world, we can start to separate our true desires from those implanted by the culture of consumption. Real change begins not in grand revolutions, but in small deliberate shifts in how we think, reflect, and interact with our environment. We must also confront our dependence on technology and learn to use it consciously rather than compulsively. Technology should serve us, not define us. This means setting boundaries, creating spaces where screens do not dominate, and fostering habits that prioritize human interaction. Imagine a world where technology enhances reflection rather than interrupting it. A world where digital minimalism becomes a form of resistance against the relentless demands for attention and conformity. Reclaiming our humanity also means embracing vulnerability. We've been taught to project confidence, control, and success at all times, but this obsession with perfection isolates us. To rebuild a society worth living in, we must be honest about our fears, our struggles, and our imperfections. Only when we stop pretending to be unbreakable can we form connections that heal rather than harm. The question is not just how to resist modernity's collapse, but how to transform it. How to use this moment of crisis as a catalyst for deeper change. We must ask ourselves, what kind of life do we truly want? One defined by relentless productivity and hollow freedom, or one marked by genuine connection, thoughtful action, and the courage to live deliberately? Change starts with small acts of rebellion, choosing simplicity over complexity, depth over distraction, presence over performance. We cannot wait for the system to change on its own. It begins with individual choices, opting to slow down, to reflect, to disconnect when necessary, to build relationships rooted in honesty rather than convenience. Perhaps the future lies not in advancing further into technological dependence, but in stepping back, recalibrating our priorities, and learning to live with less noise, less haste, less superficiality. It's not about rejecting modernity outright, but about reshaping it to serve human well-being rather than exploit it. So where do we go from here? The answer is not in the next big innovation or the latest trend, but in rediscovering what it means to be truly human. We must choose not just to exist, but to live, deliberately, thoughtfully, and in harmony with ourselves and each other. Because the real revolution is not in mastering the world, but in reclaiming our own minds and hearts from the machinery of modern life. Now that we've dissected the collapse of modernity, the reduction of human value to mere productivity, the illusion of freedom crafted to manipulate us, and the uncertain path forward, it's time to ask ourselves, what are we going to do with this awareness? Will we continue to live as products of a system designed to exhaust us, or will we reclaim our sense of self in a world that constantly tries to define us? It's easy to feel overwhelmed. The weight of modern life presses down on us, making it hard to see a way out. But awareness is the first step toward change. The cracks we see in modernity aren't just signs of decay. They're opportunities to break free from the patterns that no longer serve us, to redefine what it means to live deliberately, rather than just survive in the noise. We must begin by questioning the value systems imposed on us. What does it really mean to be successful, to be connected, to be free? If we keep chasing goals set by a society obsessed with speed and efficiency, we'll never find the fulfillment we're seeking. Real progress starts when we redefine our values, not as metrics of achievement, but as reflections of a life well lived. If you've ever felt that gnawing sense of dissatisfaction, you're not alone. More and more people are waking up to the realization that something fundamental is missing, that despite the endless advancements and innovations, we're growing more detached, more fragmented, and more fatigued. But this awareness itself is a form of liberation. It means you're seeing through the illusion, recognizing that what we've been conditioned to value might not truly align with what makes us human. Take a step back, slow down, disconnect from the incessant push to be more, to achieve more, to own more. Start small, choose moments of silence, embrace simple routines, seek genuine connections. Rebuild your sense of worth not based on productivity, but on authenticity. You don't need to prove your value to a system that doesn't value your humanity. You just need to remember that your worth was never meant to be quantified. It's time to break the cycle. Time to choose presence over performance, meaning over metrics, depth over distraction. The change won't be instant, and it won't be easy. But every deliberate action you take to reclaim your sense of self is a step toward a life that feels real, grounded, and truly yours. If this video resonated with you, make sure to subscribe for more explorations like this, where we challenge the norms, question the narratives, and seek truths that go beyond the surface. Leave a comment below with the words, "I choose to break free," if you're ready to reclaim your humanity from the grip of modernity. Together we can challenge the status quo, reconnect with our essence, and find a way to live that honors our true selves, not as data points or metrics, but as human beings deserving of peace, purpose, and freedom.